We give thanks today for two extraordinary pioneers. Anna Julia Haywood Cooper was born in 1859 in Raleigh, North Carolina. She was a teacher. She went to what was at that point the embryonic version of what we know as St. Augustine College. And through an extraordinary set of circumstances, did everything she could to be raised up as a teacher. Doors were open to her. She assisted in organizing the Colored Women's League, the first colored settlement in Washington, D.C. She became the fourth African-American woman to complete her doctorate and at the Sorbonne in Paris. None of that was ever expected of her. Elizabeth Evelyn Wright was born in Talboro, Georgia in 1872. She went to what was then the beginnings of what would later become Voorhees College, but only because Booker T. Washington's wife looked at her, noted her promise, and opened doors for her that she would have never have opened for herself. She tried to start a school in Hampton County, South Carolina, a school for rural black children, but it was burned to the ground. Undaunted, she went to Tuskegee, got more education, and went back and started another school. But it was met with the same fate, so she wound up going to Denmark, South Carolina, where she founded an industrial institute which changed the course of a number of African Americans in that community. Christian women. What do you learn from people like that? What are the lessons? It seems to me, if I look at the scriptures and see how they interface with the lives of these two women, the first thing that it seems to me is really clear is that they gave themselves to what God had called them to do. They didn't hold back. They had a vision for themselves which was in fact bigger than what a lot of other people had expected of them. It is worth praying, God, what do you see in me? What have you put in me? Some of us would shy away from that prayer because Puritans that we are, we think if we ask God to really show us what was going on inside of us, what we'd see is a lot of sin. And so we don't want to see that. We don't want to pray that kind of prayer. But the fact of the matter is that God has put treasures in us. That's a part of what it is that we have received from Him. And because He has put treasures in us, that means there is not only the opportunity to see in a new way who we are, but in the light of that begin to think about how God might want to use us in the lives of other people, according to the passions and the gifts that He really has given us. I mean, one of the things I love about this celebration today, particularly, is that we're not just celebrating the life of a monk, but these are women who really gave themselves to their community. And it's a way of saying the gifts and call of God are never merely limited to ordination, and that there is a vocational call that God has actually put on each one of us. What is the treasure? God, show me what it is that you have put within me, so that I might use that and be a faithful steward for it, for the sake of the kingdom. Secondly, if you do that, you may face some genuine opposition. Hopefully nobody's going to burn your school to the ground, or like Jesus, want to throw him off a cliff. But the fact of the matter is that to step into something that is bigger than you are, and to be a channel that God uses in the lives of other people, gets a little demonic notice. There will be pushback. It's not coincidental, Josh, that the line this morning is, "The Prince of Darkness, grim, we tremble not for him." And it's really interesting because when I walked out of my house this morning, there are a whole bunch of Hispanic men building and giving us a new roof. And that was what was playing on the radio with the lyrics in Spanish as I was walking out to the car. There is something to that that to step into a place of ministry automatically invites some of that kind of pushback. But it's meant, in fact, to toughen us up and to teach us to rely even more deeply upon the gifts that God has given us and not just our capacity to get things done. I think God, you've heard me say this before, delights in putting us in circumstances that are beyond our ability, to teach us to rely on Him in ways that we would never do if it was still only up to our own devices. So what is the treasure that God has put within you, within me? And how would He have us use it in a way that literally is for the extension of His kingdom, whether it be in this community or beyond? Don't get distracted by daydreams. Instead, fuel your prayer and see what God reveals. Amen.